today I'm representing the out of the department version. So it's just a couple of really simple case studies of how I've used the biological database in my work as a consultant, I guess. Anybody who's doing an assessment for the Native Vegetation Council has to do it with one or two methods, the bushland assessment or the bush ranger. One's for the arid zone and one's for the agricultural zone. And apart from your field component, going out and assessing the condition, there's also a conservation score component. And there are two manuals. They ask you to look up historical fauna records to come up with a threatened species score. And the wording of the manual is to use nature maps, the Atlas of Living Australia, or a biological database search in conjunction with an EPBC search tool. And the guidelines for what records to use for fauna, it has to be suitable habitat, number one, but only in the past 20 years for the agricultural zone 5 kilometres and for the arid zone within 50 kilometres of your area of interest, and with location of reliability of less than 1 kilometre. And then you also use the EPBC search tool as well. So this really, Amy's video went through the process of how to use, how to look up historical records using nature maps, which is drawing on the biological database. So in the case, just a hypothetical example near Burra, around about here, you go to the fauna tools and you use the general query tool, which brings up a whole lot more fields than the create a simple species list. And then you use a buffered line or point. You select the point option, and if you're in the agricultural zone, which Burra is, you have a buffer of 5 kilometres or 5,000 metres. So that's the area of interest. It'll do a search on, and you just select nationally or threatened, state or nationally rated threatened species. And then click to open your report. And so in our little example of our application area near Burra, it's brought up records, they're all pippy blue tongue. And so it's got a sighting date, so they're all within the last 20 kilometres, so you can use them. But these ones have to be denatured. So there's an environmentally sensitive species register maintained by the biological database people. And so there's certain records, I think there's about, there's a lot of orchids, a lot of raptors, 2 reptiles. Pippy blue tongue happens to be one, and so they're denatured down to 0.1 decimal degree, which is 10 kilometres. The manual says, use a spatial resolution of less than 1 kilometre, but what the Native Vegetation unit say is, if it comes up and your area is suitable habitat, so you've got a lavender grassland out of Burra, then it's likely to be suitable habitat for pippy blue tongues, and we use this in the threatened species score when doing an assessment. This was another example up near Lake Torrens, and you can see we had a 50-kilometre buffer, and it brought up a whole lot of species, fauna species which have been historically recorded. So then it's a matter of the consultant working through, filtering by date, only used ones in the last 20 years. The spatial resolution's good for all these ones. And then but the top one again, the Panati knobtail gecko, that was the other environmentally sensitive species. And then the consultant, what they would have to do is decide if you're on a sand dune near Lake Torrens, which is suitable habitat, you'd use it. If you're in a creek bed, you wouldn't use it. So it's just an integral part of doing assessments now under the Native Vegetation Act for the council. So you don't have to actually pay money to do a biological database search. But in conjunction, you do an environmental EPBC protected matters search, which is also using biological data, BDBSA data, but some other records which might not be in the BDBSA, like some bird records or museum records. And then, just very quickly, another example, quite an interesting one, doing revegetation plans. I've done a few in the last few years. On the River Light, east of Kapunga, west of Truro, her neighbour had done some direct seeding of quite dense planting of peppermint box on the River Light, and she thought, this is great, this is what I want, nice tree-lined river. But as you can see, there's not a lot of trees in the region, and Kate, I guess, became aware of this, and we suddenly thought, well, maybe there weren't a lot of trees on the River Light. Now, what was there? So I kind of did a lot of literature review and searched the surveyor's records, but there's 4 main eucalypt species in the region, so I looked up the biological database records for each one of them. Red gums, the yellow is the application area, the River Light corridor is something like that. You see no historical records of red gums, or blue gums, peppermint box, and a couple of she oaks. So in my Reed Veg plan, we showed these maps to the landholders, and we had lots of talks over the kitchen table, and it was a really interesting learning experience for everybody. So from going on a plan of, they want a dense tree-lined river, we came up with a compromise, and the planting mix we put in was lots of sedges, ground shrubs, ground layers, shrubs, and a few trees, because they like trees, but not too many. and not during the day, it came out, oh yes, the red gums, they were actually planted by the trout fishers because to provide shade for the trout, and they never were actually here. And we don't remember any trees, so it's been a really successful project, and they're actually doing another planting day in 2 weeks' time, to follow on. So showing the landholder the biological database records, I think we all learned a lot from it, and they could see, wow, there never were really trees in the river corridor, and we even had conjectures, well, maybe it was frost and things like that. So I think everybody got a lot out of the project. So.